I suppose, the Anna Kasparians of the world, that they show up on the Jacobin and those kind of things, and they tout this collectivist society of Marxism and how communism will finally be ushered in and blah blah. And yet they stiff arm any material expression of that in their own lives. Zero. Like there is no like I workers co-op going on in their place of business in any format, like not in their interpersonal relationships, not in how they pay or don't pay the people on. They're big on firing people willy-nilly. It's pretty hilarious. And so I always, I think it's on the one hand hilarious when they present themselves as being, even using the word left in its extreme form, meaning some sort of socialist or communist ideology, which they clearly do not participate in. Jimmy Dore is a millionaire. How does that happen? Yes, he is. He has a house in the Hollywood Hills, like any good Marxist. So, Hype Train on Twitch. That's right. Before I get into this, welcome to the show. It's Hal Sparks Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, become a Patreon supporter. Patreon.com/HalSparks. Because I tell you who I am and what I'm here to do, and I'm honest about it. That's right. I work for a living. I'm a stiff just like you, and I need your help to make this show work. So subscribe at the very least. Do the free stuff. And then if you feel like you like what I'm doing and you go, hey, nobody else is doing that, and the details this dude points out are pretty darn sharp, and the connections he makes are very sort of just call me Alex Jones. You know what I mean? I don't need the documents. I've got it all memorized. So where do we start? Okay, so there's a lot of lerve for Putin going on at Jimmy Dore's. I mean, just here. I'll show you the thumbnail. That's the thumbnail. And it's a look how sly Putin looks. And Janet Yellen looks like there's someone outside her window or something. I don't know what this. I guess that's the best. He didn't want to get a straight on shot of her where she looked like a serious person, so he had to grab. It's interesting because you can break down what people are trying to tell you propaganda-wise by their thumbnails. It's pretty fascinating. There's an art. There's an art to the thumbnails. CSL and I do it, do our best, but we're pikers compared to the Hassan Pikers of the world, who are just masters at manipulating the thickheads. I'm sorry, there's going to be an ad at the top of this, isn't there?
Over the past 6 months,
yes.
We have been investigating as well as exposing the truth behind all of these food processing plants that have been catching on fire and burning.
Yes. Hey, remember when? By the way, haven't been. They're still Epic Times is still running the ad, and this was talk about a dead talking point. This is a talking point that's been like cratered months ago. Like shit, the Fox and Friends gave up on that in what, August?
They said that the Russia's losing the war, and we crashed their economy because of the Ukraine war, and we're doing all that, and Russia's losing, and they're crashing their economy, and they're losing, and their economy's crashing. Remember all that? Not true.
No, I remember you saying they're doing great. I remember everybody saying that the sanctions would wreck their economy. Oh, well, we'll check. We'll check. I don't know where he's going with this, but the reason, obviously, we're watching this. This is the title: Russian economy soars past Germany and the UK. So Germany, the country that was using the most Russian oil and gas, and the UK, who Brexited their way into their own version of MAGA, and have gone through 3 prime ministers this year, or last year. I mean, I guess they've hung with this dude for a few months.
True. None of it's true.
None of it is true. They're doing great. I mean, it's so good. Jimmy's moving there. He's going to pack up his shit because it's a growth industry, that Russia.
Russia is winning the war.
And again, curiously, why would you be happy about this? I mean, you don't have to like what the U.S. is doing, But the idea that you would like that they're winning, it is incredibly fucking telling.
And their economy is doing fantastic.
It's fantastic. Guys, it's fantastic. Hold on one second. I got to look up something. Okay. Let's see. Their economy, and I quote, is doing fantastic. We'll see if that's the case. All right, please continue. I want to hear the whole case first. This is a blissfully short clip from Jimmy.
Russia's economy is now forecast to grow faster than Germany's. And
it's not already? It's forecast to. I see. So it will, if and when, in this. Okay, I'm sorry. I was mistaken. I thought this was actually already happening. Even Jimmy has been caught off guard. Look on his face. Will is now forecast to grow. Forecast. Shit, that means not yet.
Britain's. How is that possible? Well, because they have a lot of natural resources that the world needs.
Yes. Needs. It's what every family needs. You mean oil and gas? So, by the way, this is Jimmy, the millionaire Marxist, throwing in his weight behind oil and gas producers. What else do they make, Jimmy? Besides weapons, oil, gas, bombs and guns? I know. Artificial, like faux-gressives. I see. Yes, that's a growth industry as well.
And one of those countries that needs it is China.
Uh-huh. Yes, they do. They import 80% of their energy and food. This might be news to Jimmy.
And so now China and Russia are being pushed closer together.
Oh, yeah. They're so close together. They are. And I guess we're doomed. The United States intertwining our economy with China worked out so well.
And now there's other economic power centers being developed. So instead of just NATO, it now...
Yeah. The BRICS. Tell us about the crypto. You know what? Just go back to what you were talking about in August and talk about it as if it already happened, because if you'll recall, Jimmy was saying that the BRICS countries were going to come up with their own crypto coin to get rid of the petrodollar somewhere, and the US dollar is done. That was the quote in August. But we're the ones who are making the wrong predictions.
There's BRICS.
Just, do I have to? All right. Yeah. You think?
Right, which is all these other countries coming
Yesterday, I had a hard time figuring out what the S was. We'll see if he remembers or even
together economically in opposition to the United States and the West. And IMF forecast puts numbers on a problem for the West when it comes to Russia and its war on Ukraine. Hey, they look, on the face of it, like mistakes. This week, number crunchers at the International Monetary Fund released forecasts saying that over the coming year, Russia's economy will grow while Britain's will contract.
How many people think that Russia is in a massive deficit, and even growth means crawling out of a hole, and that England, while they contract, will still be, I think, hold on one second. I think the article I just pulled up a second ago let's see. Let's start with this one. I love that too. Russian budget deficit hits 34 billion, but spending growth slows. So even borrowing money, their spending has gone down. I don't know about you, but I think that's a winner right there. That's the future you want. There's no wonder that Jimmy is moving there. Russia's budget deficit, and this is from March 6th. But Russia's budget deficit jumped in the first 2 months of the year, but spending showed signs of growing at a slower pace amid the invasion of Ukraine. By the way, I'm fairly certain. Wait, when's this article that he talked about? Hold on. That's from March 6th. That's what I'm reading. There it is. Does it say when? It's down here. February 3rd. Yeah, I mean, just get tracked. Okay, well, we're back to where we were. Okay, so March 6th. More current numbers, as it were. Here you go. And this is after they released these numbers. And the numbers he's reading are before Russia released its numbers. There you go. The shortfall reached 2.58 trillion rubles, 34 billion, with expenditure at 5.74 trillion rubles, the finance ministry said on Monday. This would be on Monday, the week of March 6th, as opposed to February 3rd, when Jimmy is reading an article from a show that he put up last night, I guess, March 15th. Huh. That's you know what? I always feel, and I think a lot of you guys who are investors agree with me, that what you really want to do is like January of the year, read whatever it says about the stock market on any given day, and then trade accordingly. Don't listen to any new information going forward, financially especially, because nothing happens after those numbers have been established. Those are, I don't know if you know this, but the Dow puts out the numbers for the year. Okay, here we go. Although the budget is deep in the red, the ministry said it remains on target to keep the shortfall for the year within the target. Oh, good. So their shortfall for the year is within the targeted range that they want. So their losses are getting okay. It blamed heavily front-loaded spending this year for this jump in expenditures. What are they spending money on? What could they possibly front-loaded? Death and destruction. That's right. The main reason behind the deficit decline is a 15% drop in public spending after extremely large outlays in the first month of the year. Still, Moscow will find it challenging to, and by the way, that's a 15% drop after as soon as they spent everything on military shit, back to where it was. Like this is an infusion. This is for the who's at home who have been around during our conversations about Iraq war spending and why the fuck we needed to get out of Afghanistan and the limits of Pentagon spending and all the stuff that we actually give a fuck about. Those folks who've been around and understand this kind of stuff will recognize a wag the dog spending when they see it. Except Jimmy, I suppose. Still, Moscow will find it challenging to balance its books as domestic sovereign yields soared above 11% and non-oil revenues continue to shrink. But hey, you know what? China needs a lot of oil, and Russia is selling it. I mean, pow. Okay. This is from Alexander Isakov, a Russian economist. Sanctions and other restrictions imposed by the U.S. and its allies over Russia's invasion of Ukraine have hit the country's earnings from energy exports as hard as the limits have taken hold in the last few months. Non-energy revenues were down 9%, a smaller drop than the 28% seen in January. So after they went down 28%, they went down another 9%, which all right. Even if they went down 28% and went up 9%, you'd still be in fucked category, would you not? The ministry said that changes to the oil pricing formula used for calculating taxes will help ease the pain for the budget, especially in the second half of the year, which is them basically nationalizing the oil to fuel the war machine, which, again, Jimmy is for. Meanwhile, boink, if I may, don't trust Russia's numbers. This is foreign policy writing on this. Moscow has made economic statistics a central part of its information war. I don't know why Jimmy didn't use that picture in his thumbnail. I can't imagine. Why do so many people in the West, who should probably know better by now, trust the data of authoritarian governments conducting an information war? I don't know. It's almost like they're rooting for them. The latest controversy surrounds the state of the Russian economy and what Western media and others have been reporting to their audiences. Read anything about the war in Ukraine these days, and you'll probably find a mention that the Russian economy contracted by about 2% in 2022, a low decline that suggests little more than a mild recession. That number has entered the policy debate. For some, the low figure is proof the Russian economy is resilient and sanctions do not work. Others use the same figure to argue that sanctions are starting to bite and Western countries should double down. Those opposing arguments have one thing in common. They rely on a largely meaningless number. Even if Russia's reported GDP decline were truthful, it is clear that that three factors artificially boosted the Russian growth in 2022. First, the economic growth figure has been fueled by Russia's turbocharged production of military gear. Because that's what you want. That's the sign of a healthy economy. Don't worry. We don't need to make TVs and toasters and washing machines and clothing and increase food production and that kind of thing. We just make weapons of war. And for the record, is anybody following the fact that Aaron Mate and Jimmy Dore and all these assholes, all of them say that the United States needs the military-industrial complex. We're starting the war in Ukraine, and we're pushing Russia to do this. I don't know how we managed 8 years ago to trigger this shit now, whatever. But anyways, that we need, that the American economy runs on military expenditures. And therefore, we need to start these conflicts to pay for everything. But then when Russia actually does it, that's what this actually is. This is exactly that. They're like, it's a winner. This is a winning way of running an economy. By the way, meanwhile, a little cherry on top of this, Putin urges business leaders to build new Russian economy. Why would you build a new economy if the one you have is working well? I don't know. That's a good question. This is another one of those things. This is like the third meeting he's had this year, like the one in January where he was yelling at the aerospace community to build more fucking planes. And they're like, with what? Okay, so here we go. But they're doing great.
And that Russia will eventually grow faster than Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse. So Russia is going to have a more robust economy now.
Mm-hmm. You do realize that, again, it matters how you measure growth. Jimmy seems to be under the impression that that Russia's a grower, not a shower. And the fact that it has an innie right now shouldn't worry anyone, because by the time it's done growing, it'll be wagging a sausage. And everybody else who might have some winter shrinkage is clearly retreating into their taint. What a terrible analogy. I apologize.
Now, after all this economic hurt we're putting on them with the Ukraine war, then Germany.
I also, again, article from February 3rd, single source, just the grid. I don't know why he wouldn't jump around to other sources.
The economic powerhouse of Europe.
Oh, and by the way, this is from the grid, trusting the IMF's predictions. Please go and look up, if you give a shit or you think I'm speaking out of turn about any of this, please look up anywhere where Jimmy talks favorably about the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, which I think he believes is most of the time is a front for the CIA.
Russia's now going to surpass them.
Did we?
No. A person who climbs 6 feet out of a 10-foot, when they're in a 10-foot hole, versus another person who climbs 2 feet up a hill, which one is further along in their journey to the top of the mountain? You see the issue here? Jimmy doesn't. Neither does Kurt.
Did not know that when we blew up that gas pipeline that was clearly
we knew that
going to harm Germany.
Why Germany?
Germany had already stopped using Nord Stream and they already have all right. Okay, one more second. This is another thing that I can't. All right. And this is going to be, what's the date on this one? Yeah, okay, hold on one second. Let me back up. If you'll recall, let's see, Nord Stream 2 explosion. Let's see what the date was on that. Yeah, okay, so here you go. So September 26th, day after my birthday, actually. is when that happened. And November, this article is 3 months old. November, which would be after September, after Nord Stream got blown up. Germany agrees 15-year agrees 15-year liquid gas supply deal. Agrees to. I think there would be a 2 in there, wouldn't? Clearly, they have not updated it with conjunctions. Racing to wean itself off Russian gas supplies, Germany is set to buy 2 million tons of liquid gas from the Gulf state. I would think not from Gulf state. Or they just have something. All right. German firms have signed a 15-year deal to buy 2 million tons of liquid gas from Qatar. I talked about this yesterday, that Qatar was actually the bigger beneficiary of the removal of Russian gas than the U.S. or any of the Netherlands or Norway or Finland, which are the biggest gas producers in Europe. Does Jimmy know that? Jimmy doesn't care.
Germany's still going along with it. Just shows you the pressure of capitalists.
Huh? What? I'm sorry, who?
When we blew up that gas pipeline, that was clearly
we knew that.
Going to harm Germany. Like
why Germany's still going along with it? Just shows you the pressure of capitalists.
Does Jimmy not think that the Russians are capitalist? Thank you, Tobias, by the way. Oh, hey, hello, Jimmy's audio's too loud? Okay, thank you. I'll bring it down a touch. Thanks.
But there are no mistakes.
Oh, yeah, I see that now.
Just surprising turns of events in all the countries involved. The numbers would have been hard to imagine in the early days of the war when...
And now you're imagining them just fine.
Western sanctions set the Russian stock market and the local currency, the ruble, into free fall, and hundreds of international firms from McDonald's to Boeing pulling out of the country.
Wait, I remember a while ago covering this, and the ruble was like more stable.
Well, this was at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
This was, he's saying, at this sort of...
Again, I don't know what you got to do. Do you got to touch base? Do you have to walk him through the timeline of when you're talking? Not that Jimmy gives a shit.
Been hard to believe at the early days of the war when all this shit was happening. In March 2022, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen confidently predicted that the Russian economy will be devastated.
No, it looks great. Yeah, it's looking good. It's not. It's only the biggest deficit they've had in 100 years against a country with like the 36th largest military in the world when they attacked. By the way, we've given them a lot of material, but they've actually gotten more tanks from Russia than they've gotten from anybody else.
Set your watch to the opposite of anything she says, and it's the right time.
Even the Russians expected a deeper economic crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The Russian...
It says crisis. It doesn't say crises. That would be plural. Fuck
me.
The
Finance Ministry was reported to be bracing for a fall in GDP of more than 10%. As recently as December, Reuters' poll of 15 economists forecast a 2.5% drop in the coming year. And yet here we are. The experts don't know their asshole from a hole in the ground again, and they're 100% freaking wrong, like they always are. Who saw it coming? Nobody saw it coming.
Wait, are you telling me that Russia is selling us their oil at double the price through 3 people because the sanctions don't work was going to get them more money?
I see. So Jimmy's Kurt's under the impression that the U.S. is buying Russian oil via, I guess, India and then what? Somalia? Okay, hold on one second. Whoops. Hold on one second. There we go. Now, this isn't obviously from a story from last March, nor is this a story from February 3rd. This is yesterday. Russia's oil revenues fall sharply as the West price cap starts to bite. The oil cap started in January, February 5th. The gas rule, like any processed oil product, kicked in on that. The IEA said Russia's estimated oil export revenues fell to 11.6 billion last month, down 2.7 billion from January when volumes were significantly higher. It remains to be seen if there will be sufficient appetite for Russian oil products now that the price cap is in place, or if its production will start to fall under the weight of sanctions, the IEA said. Revenues are already dwindling, the energy agency. But, again, what are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe them? The grid a month ago or the International Energy Agency yesterday? I don't know. Do they spin a wheel to see who runs things at the CIA these days? Like, okay, today we run this company and tomorrow we don't. We're in charge of the IEA today. The International Energy on Wednesday agency said Russia's oil export revenues fell sharply in February, prompted by bans and price caps designed to curtail Putin's ability to finance the war in Ukraine. The IEA said Russia's estimated oil we already saw that part. It remains to be seen if there will be sufficient. We saw that part too. Energy agency said, citing the Russian finance ministry. Okay, so they're using obviously hyper partisan U.S. neocon figures, probably Hillary Clinton in a disguise, that Moscow's fiscal receipts from oil sales were just 45% of the level from a year earlier. Almost a 50% drop in a single year. That's not, and that's, but they're getting closer. It's them in China and India, and their receipts, their fiscal receipts. The latest figures come shortly after the IEA said in mid-February that the West's oil war against Russia appeared to be having the intended effect, despite surprisingly resilient production and exports in recent months. Ukrainian officials and campaigners have previously called for Western policymakers to ramp up financial pressure on Russia by targeting its oil revenues to help Kiev prevail. I still don't know usually we get caught up in how dumb Jimmy is, but let's take a moment to appreciate how dumb Kurt is. Let's back up and let's look at what Kurt just said and see if you can spot the dislocation in his brainstem that makes it impossible for him to comprehend the difference between wholesale, retail, and resale in these three instances. Let's see. Say it.
Always are. Who saw it coming? Nobody saw it coming.
Wait, are you telling me that Russia is selling us their oil at double the price through three people because the sanctions don't work was going to get them more money?
Yeah, you heard that right. So Russia selling oil at double the price through three people. The current crude oil price right now, let's just go for, crude oil price. Whew, fuck, this is dumb. Oil prices today. Let's go with it. Right today, looking pretty good. WTI crude is $68. Brent crude's 74. So the oil prices are going down. This is not good for Russia, guys. It's also bad for Texans, which is why they're pissed. Right there. See that 68.30? Okay. So the idea is that Russia is selling that to someone for close to $140 a barrel. And they, in turn, are passing that savings along to two other parties. For what? Favors from Russia for free? Are they adding a nickel and going, hey, a penny saved is a penny earned, So if we can take $140 barrel of oil and sell it to two other people who jack up the price and then finally sell it to the United States for $200 a barrel, we'll be in the money and it'll totally be worth it. And especially if they want to sanction us for doing that. That's amazing. If you sell someone anything, Kurt, you don't get a piece of what they get when they sell it to someone else. And if your wholesale price is too high, they won't be able to move that product. So if you're selling a a product that is below market, like almost to the point of break even, if not at break even to someone else, and you've decided not to add $10 so you can cover your expenditures and maybe make a profit on it, but to in fact double the cost of it, and then expect someone else to chain sell it 3 tiers down the line to the United States. Okay, as brain farts go, whatever, when it comes to Kurt. But you have to understand that this is how both Kurt and Jimmy think the world works. That's how, imagine, like, they think this way whenever they go to the store and they're like, eggs. Because the CIA adds $20 to the price of eggs. Every encounter that they have around these issues, or indeed the periphery of these issues, filling their car up or being at dinner. I don't know if they have friends, I doubt it. But if they, let's say they have dinner with friends and they look at they're trying to decide who pays the check or who divvies it up or how it goes or whether to tip or not and that kind of shit. They factor this level of mental acuity into that process and assign some sort of externalized psychotic blame on the fucking the Illuminati as a part of every transaction. That I was not expecting that level of stupid.
And yet here we are.
And by the way, Jimmy blew it off. It was so dumb coming from Kurt. And Jimmy blew it off. And I will tell you from an experience of seeing these videos and talking through them with you as many times as I have, that Jimmy didn't blow them off because Kurt said something dumb and he's embarrassed by it, so he just wants to move on. He's afraid that Kurt said something really smart that's like next, fifth level chess, or, and he has nothing to add to it. He can't unwrap it in his own brain. So he's like, well, I don't know, that sounded like what's going on. Yeah, bro. Yeah.
Kurt, at the beginning of 2023, and the IMF now predicts that the Russian economy, after
Whoops, wait a minute. Okay. Now predicts the Russian economy, after contracting by 2.2% last year, will start growing again in 2023, expanding by 0.3%. So does anybody see the math going on there? Jimmy, do you see it? You look shocked? Because I'm about to point out the fact that still means even if it took them a whole year to turn last year's 2.2 into 1.8. Still, yeah, they're driving in reverse, slightly slower. And that's what the IMF's puffery, believing the figures that they had at the time before the Russian ministry came out and said, actually, we're kind of fucked. We're really sort of fucked. I'm not going to shit you about this. It's bad. It's like, it's not quite shit your pants, unless that's your idea of a good time. But it's the Russian economy, what can I say? It's better than a sharp stick in the eye, but only just. It's better than someone pulling the stick out quickly. They pull stick out slowly, one notch at a time. All right. And then it'll and expanding by 0.3%, and then 2.1% in 2024. Can you imagine what those figures are based on? That the IMF says that a year from now, 2 years from now, at the end of 2024, it would have resulted in Russia's economy expanding by 2.1%. By the way, the 2.2% contraction last year, also based on exaggerated numbers from the Russian ministry last time, literally wartime numbers. But anyways, it's not important.
Contracting by 2.2% last year, will start growing again in 2023, expanding by 0.3%, and then by 2.1% in 2024.
Yeah. And when has anybody in a 2-year prediction in the middle of a war ever been wrong? Oh, they already have. I'm sorry. The Russian finance ministry actually released figures already that show that won't happen. And if, oh, by the way, if it increased 2.1%, it'll be because this 0.3% expansion will actually end up being a contraction of close to 4%. But please continue.
As for those European powerhouses, well, the UK is expected to contract by 0.6%.
Mm-hmm.
Germany will still be in the black, but only just frickin' barely. Growth this year is expected to come at an anemic 0.1%.
But will they be at net zero?
Go to Jimmy Dore.
Oh, look at that. He at the tail end of it. This is good. This is right in the middle of this. Go to Jimmy. Yeah, all right. So at an anemic 0.1%. Now, Jimmy doesn't recognize, of course, that this is still Germany being ahead while transitioning off of Russian oil and gas. While leaving behind their primary energy source, they're still growing, which is ridiculous. The UK's contraction, hold on. Jimmy clearly looked at these. UK economic numbers. Let's go to here. Okay. Previous 3 months current zero shows 19.4 billion. Economic indicators, House of Commons layer, gross. Let me go to news on this. This is the current. Will this shrink down so you can see it? No, hold on. I got it. Minus. There we go. All right. Well, that's just the trade deficit. That doesn't help me. Okay, let's go to news. The UK economic numbers. GDP monthly estimate, January 23, return to school unexpectedly boosts UK economy in January. UK rebounds as Rishi Sunak because confidence is returning. UK budget deepens social. Okay, hold on. The budget offers more free childcare as work incentive. UK will not enter a recession this year. Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt says in budget speech. Let's see. That's probably the most depressing version of events. So let's take a look. UK will not enter a recession this year. Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt says. No relation to Michael. Says in a budget speech, U.S. Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said Wednesday that the economy would no longer enter a technical recession in 2023 based on new forecasts from the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility. Announcing the government's spring budget, Hunt said that the UK economy was proving the doubters wrong, following earlier predictions that the country was facing its longest ever recession. The Chancellor also unveiled a series of workforce and childcare reforms aimed at stemming early retirement and tackling the country's chronic worker shortage. British Finance Minister said Wednesday that the UK economy would not enter a technical recession in 2023 as previously anticipated. The updated outlook was based on new forecasts, blah, blah, blah. The Chancellor said, here it is. Its revised outlook, the OBR said, predicts that the economy will contract by 0.2% this year, before growing by 1.8 in 2024 and 2.5 in 2025. During the autumn statement in November, the OBR said that the economy would shrink by 1.4 in 2023. The OBR, so it'll be like months up and months down, and that's why I think that's where they're going with this. The rate of inflation currently stands at 10%, having fallen from a high of 11.1 in October. However, it still stands well above the target of 2%. This is all Brexit related. They forecast, because now they have to import European goods and stuff as a total stranger. They have to do basically unilateral trade deals with everybody. The forecast will meet with the priorities, blah, 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 workforce reforms. And then they still, and by the way, Jimmy is rooting for the UK to shit the bed. And the UK, for the record, now I would just like to stack this against the things that Jimmy supposedly liked Bernie for, and the things that he supposedly liked the Squad for before he hated them. In a slew of budget announcements, Hunt raised the pension allowance for higher earners in an effort to stem early retirement and improve the country's chronic worker shortage. The Chancellor of the Exchequer increased the cap on tax-free annual pension contributions from £60,000 to £60,000 from £40,000. He also abolished a lifetime allowance on tax-free pension pots. Childcare support. The finance minister also announced a package of support for working parents, many of whom have been deterred from returning to work due to UK childcare costs, which rank as the highest in the world, according to the OECD. Which, by the way, if you talk about like all the complaints about inflationary measures where you print money and it goes into the thing and it raises the cost. When the government specifically pays for child care support directly the way the UK government does, the price just ticks up. This is the effect of a UBI situation in these circumstances, and it's uniform across the entire country. Unlike, state-driven things where some states may say, fuck your kids, and other states go, yeah, we're throwing everything we have at them. And so the prices in those states will vary differently. And some people will go, if you get too high, I might move to another state to raise my kids. And that's the back and forth. The UK has none of that. It's uniform across the entire state, or the entire country. An expansion of free childcare support will provide an extra 30 hours a week of care for working parents of children over the age of 9 months. Previously, the free childcare allowance was available only to parents of 3 and 4-year-olds. There you go. So that's the end of it. That's, oh God, thanks. Thank God it was fucking short. But at the tail end of it, I forgot. Let's go with Jimmy and Kurt. Like on Jimmy's show, Kurt, on his way out the door, makes a jab at climate change policy, at the concept of net zero. Watch this. Oh, sorry, I've got to push play on this guy.
Growth this year is expected to come at an anemic 0.1%.
But will they be at net zero?
And then that's it. That's the end of the. That's where they decided to cut out on it. They wanted to include that. I guess they had to, because he kind of stepped on him a little bit. Yeah, just on his way out the door, hyper left wing Jimmy Dore has Kurt Metzger shitting on the concept of net zero as a policy for fucking what? No? Anybody? All right. By the way, you're watching House Sparks Mega Worldwide. I don't pick these clips. I do pick which ones we're gonna have from a list of them, because there's so many. But I don't cut these clips out of their show and say I'm gonna talk about this chunk. They present this as their argument. They present this as this is the best I got. This is me saying my piece about this thing. And nobody does it better. And they stand by that. So I feel like I can, as long as I do the entire clip, or if I get bored, bail out early, as long as I'm not taking a piece out of context, I can say my piece with a clear conscience.